Hollywood's golden age was built on glittering illusions. On the screen, the stars seemed immortal. Bullets missed them, disasters spared them, and time politely stepped aside as they lit up theaters year after year. Fans watched them survive wars, heartbreak, and danger with a grace that felt superhuman. But away from the spotlight, these icons were vulnerable in ways the public rarely saw. They were adored, admired, even worshipped. Yet they lived inside fragile human bodies, and when those bodies failed, the truth became impossible to ignore. Even Hollywood legends are not immune to the risks of the operating table. As celebrity medical researcher Dr. Jonathan Reynolds once said, "We don't like imagining our idols in surgical gowns. There is something unsettling about seeing godlike figures brought low by the same medical fragility that affects everyone else." What makes their surgical deaths so haunting isn't only the shock factor. It's what these tragedies reveal about the pressures of fame. Some stars chased eternal youth through risky procedures, others were victims of medical mistakes. A few sought routine care that went catastrophically wrong, and some were forced onto operating tables by violence rather than choice. Today we're lifting the velvet curtain to examine 9 Golden Age stars whose final moments unfolded under harsh surgical lights. Moments far from the glitz, glamour, and perfection Hollywood projected. Each story is a reminder that fame cannot shield anyone from human frailty. Let's begin. Jeff Chandler, the leading man who lost everything to a surgical error. Jeff Chandler was everything a Golden Age studio could want. Tall, rugged, strikingly handsome, and instantly recognizable with his silver hair and resonant voice. In the 1950s and early 1960s, he became a top-billed leading man, known for epic roles, stoic heroes, and masculine strength. But in 1961, his life ended not on a film set, nor in some dramatic real-world incident, but in the sterile confines of an operating room. Chandler injured his back while casually playing baseball, a minor inconvenience for most people. When basic treatment didn't help, doctors suggested a simple surgery for a herniated disc. In that era, it was considered routine. Dr. Robert Stevens, a historian of surgical practices, summarized it bluntly. Chandler's death is one of the clearest examples of medical error ending a life that never should have been at risk. During the procedure, a surgeon accidentally cut an artery, causing massive internal bleeding. Though doctors tried to stabilize him, the blood loss weakened his body so severely that infection and other complications took hold. Over the next several weeks, his condition declined until he finally succumbed. He was just 42. Adding tragic irony, many medical experts later questioned whether Chandler even needed surgery. Some believed his condition could have resolved with conservative treatment. Hollywood's relentless expectations may have pressured him into rushing toward a quick fix, a fix that killed him. His posthumous appearance in Merrill's Marauders left audiences watching a hero on screen who, in reality, had been destroyed by a preventable surgical mistake, a devastating reminder that even the strongest Hollywood heroes had vulnerable human bodies beneath the costume. Joan Crawford, the Queen of Control, and the rumors that refused to die. Joan Crawford didn't just act, she built herself. Every angle of her face, every gesture, every shadow on film was carefully sculpted. Her dedication to perfection became legendary, sometimes terrifyingly so. She controlled everything, her image, her environment, and especially her appearance. So when she died in 1977, officially of a heart attack, many biographers and insiders believed there was more to the story. Rumors swirled that Crawford was undergoing a secret cosmetic procedure at home when things went fatally wrong. Celebrity historian Thomas Henderson explains why these rumors were so persistent. Crawford's obsession with maintaining her appearance was extreme. The idea that she died trying to preserve it fits what the public already knew about her. Indeed, Crawford spent decades enduring harsh beauty regimens, ice baths, lemon scrubs so abrasive they caused bleeding, dental reshaping done purely for aesthetic angles, taping her face beneath wigs, light manipulation on set so precise she carried her own custom lighting maps. Given that history, the idea of clandestine treatments isn't far-fetched. However, and this is what keeps the mystery alive, no medical records have ever been released, and the people closest to her provided conflicting accounts. Some insisted she collapsed naturally at home. Others whispered about unlicensed cosmetic injections and fatal complications. With no conclusive evidence, Crawford's death occupies a shadowy space between truth and legend, much like Crawford herself, a woman who spent her life blurring the line between reality and carefully crafted illusion. Whether she died naturally or while chasing eternal youth, her end reflected the crushing pressure placed on aging actresses in an industry obsessed with flawless beauty. Jane Russell, the bombshell who faced the realities of age. Jane Russell wasn't just an icon of Hollywood's golden age, she was a force of nature in an era that wasn't ready for a woman like her. Long before controversy became a deliberate marketing strategy, Russell was stirring headlines simply by existing. Her beauty, her boldness, and her refusal to be controlled made her one of the most talked about women in the entertainment industry. Her rise began with The Outlaw, the film that would immortalize her. Howard Hughes, always obsessed with spectacle, famously engineered a special bra designed specifically to showcase Russell's voluptuous figure. Whether she wore that bra or tossed it aside, one thing became clear: Jane Russell had arrived, and she was unlike anyone the audience had ever seen. With her sultry voice, sharp wit, and unmistakable brunette bombshell presence, she became one of Hollywood's most defining symbols of feminine allure. But beyond the glamorous posters and the carefully staged publicity shots, Russell was more than just a screen siren. She was outspoken, grounded, and deeply self-aware. She challenged studio expectations, pushed back against the rigid moral standards of the era, and carved out a career on her own terms. Few actresses managed to hold such power in a male-dominated industry, yet Russell did it with an effortless confidence that inspired generations of women who followed. Unlike many stars whose lives burned bright but ended tragically young, Jane Russell's story took a different path. She lived a remarkably long life, reaching the age of 89. Her death in 2011 came shortly after lung surgery, a medically necessary procedure that had nothing to do with vanity, scandal, or the Hollywood pressures that often consume aging performers. It was simply a step taken to protect her health, and even that decision reflected her practicality and determination. Dr. Stevens, reviewing her case, explained it plainly. Russell's case represents normal medical risk, not misjudgment or reckless intervention. The surgery itself reportedly went smoothly. The problem came afterward, during recovery, where the realities of age began to work against her. For elderly patients, even a successful procedure can be followed by complications that younger bodies can easily withstand. Respiratory difficulties, sensitivity to anesthesia, weakened organs, and slower healing all became part of the struggle Russell faced. These issues weren't shocking. They weren't the result of malpractice. They were simply the consequences of being human. And that is what makes Jane Russell's story so profound. In a world that had spent decades projecting her as larger than life, her final chapter reminds us that no level of fame, beauty, or success can shield a person from the universal truth of mortality. Her passing wasn't surrounded by scandal. It didn't become tabloid fodder. Instead, it was quiet, natural, and deeply human. The woman whose curves once captivated millions, whose image defined an era, ultimately faced the same physical fragility shared by countless people her age. Her death stands as a reminder, not of Hollywood excess, but of the simple reality that even legends are bound by biology. And in that truth lies a different kind of legacy, one rooted in resilience, authenticity, and the inevitable passage of time. Barbara Payton, the star destroyed by Hollywood, then by the scalpel. Barbara Payton's rise through Hollywood was nothing short of meteoric. The moment she stepped onto a studio lot, people noticed her. She had that impossible combination of raw beauty, natural screen presence, and an effortless charm that made casting directors believe she was destined to become the next major star. And for a short moment, it seemed certain. Her early performances sparkled with potential. Critics praised her, studios invested in her, audiences adored her. Barbara Payton was the kind of talent Hollywood loves to claim it discovered. But the same industry that elevated her would soon become the backdrop for one of Hollywood's most devastating downfalls. Payton's story is not just tragic, it is a brutal reminder of how quickly fame can turn into a weapon. Her collapse began with a scandal that consumed the tabloids, a volatile love triangle involving two actors, Franchot Tone and Tom Neal. What started as gossip spiraled into shocking violence. Tom Neal's brutal beating of Tone, an incident that made national headlines, dragged Payton into a storm she could never escape. Studios pulled away, producers stopped calling. Overnight, she shifted from rising star to public spectacle. Hollywood had no space for a woman surrounded by scandal, and it certainly had no interest in protecting her. By her 30s, Barbara Payton's life had shattered. She began spiraling into homelessness, alcoholism, arrest after arrest, and a series of degrading relationships with people who saw her desperation as an opportunity. The industry that once celebrated her didn't lift a finger to help. If anything, it seemed to watch in fascination as she fell apart. She became a cautionary tale, an example of what happens when a star cannot maintain the perfect image Hollywood demands. Officially, Barbara Payton died at just 39 years old. The recorded cause of death was heart and liver failure brought on by years of alcohol abuse. It was a bleak end. But for those who knew her or followed her story closely, it didn't feel like the whole truth. Friends and former associates whispered a more heartbreaking version of her final days. They claimed Payton did not simply die at home or in a hospital bed. Instead, they say she passed away during reconstructive surgery, a procedure funded by someone from her past who desperately wanted to help her rebuild her life. The goal of the operation was to restore her appearance, which had deteriorated over years of substance abuse and hardship. This wasn't about vanity, it was about survival. In a world that had always judged her worth by her beauty, Payton believed that reclaiming it was the only way to reclaim her dignity. But her body, weakened by addiction and years of physical decline, reportedly could not withstand the anesthesia. If these accounts are true, Barbara Payton died not from scandal or excess, but from trying to pull herself out of the abyss Hollywood pushed her into. As Margaret Collins poignantly stated, "If the accounts are true, Payton died trying to reclaim the beauty that Hollywood once exploited and then discarded." It is a haunting image, Barbara Payton lying on an operating table, fighting to reconstruct the only thing the industry ever valued in her. It captures the cruelty of Hollywood in a way few stories can. The place that once promised her the world abandoned her the moment she became inconvenient. In the end, Hollywood consumed her completely, and when the world no longer cared, the scalpel finished the job. Her story remains one of the most tragic examples of the industry's ability to create stars, destroy them, and then pretend the ruin was their fault alone. Ramon Novarro, brutal violence, desperate surgery, and a tragic end. Ramon Novarro was more than a movie star. He was one of the defining faces of early Hollywood. During the silent era, his name carried the same weight as Valentino's. His performance in Ben-Hur transformed him into an international sensation, a symbol of masculine beauty, grace, and heroism. MGM treated him like royalty, crafting his image with meticulous care and presenting him to the public as the perfect leading man. For a time, he was untouchable, admired, respected, and adored. But fame is fragile, and Hollywood's affection can evaporate without warning. As the industry shifted and the silent era faded, Novarro found himself slowly pushed aside. His talent never dimmed, but the business changed around him, making him a relic of a world that no longer existed. Behind the glamorous facade, he lived a private life shaped by the pressures of being an LGBTQ man in an era when such truth was unthinkable. The studios demanded secrecy, insisting that public perception mattered more than personal happiness. Novarro learned to navigate fame while hiding who he truly was, living with the fear that exposure could destroy everything he had built. This isolation would ultimately leave him vulnerable. And decades after his greatest successes, it would place him in the path of unimaginable danger. In 1968, long after he had drifted from the Hollywood spotlight, Ramon Novarro invited two young men, Paul and Tom Ferguson, to his home. The meeting was not unusual for a man who had lived much of his adult life in the shadows, seeking companionship wherever he could find it. But the brothers arrived with a different intention altogether. They had heard rumors, false rumors, that Novarro kept large sums of cash hidden in his home. They expected easy money. What followed was not a robbery. It was a prolonged, brutal attack. Unable to find the cash they were convinced was there, the Ferguson brothers tortured Novarro for hours. The violence they inflicted was shocking even by the standards of true crime. When the assault finally ended, the injuries were catastrophic. Novarro suffered severe internal trauma, fatal bleeding, and asphyxiation. His body had endured too much. When he was finally discovered, emergency responders rushed him into surgery. Doctors did everything they could to save him, fighting against the impossible damage that had been done. Dr. James Morrison later explained the grim reality. The surgical procedures were appropriate and urgent, but no level of skill could reverse the damage he sustained. The medical team wasn't battling illness or age. They were fighting the aftermath of extreme, intentional cruelty. Novarro's injuries went far beyond what even the most experienced surgeons could repair. His life slipped away despite every effort. Ramon Novarro's death is inseparable from the hidden dangers faced by LGBTQ stars during Hollywood's golden age. Forced into secrecy, many lived double lives, isolated and afraid of public exposure. That vulnerability became a doorway through which predators could enter. Novarro, once one of the most beloved men in cinema, died not as a protected Hollywood legend, but as an isolated figure trying to survive violence he never should have faced. He didn't die surrounded by fans or studio power. He didn't die as the heroic charioteer who captivated millions. He died as a man broken by cruelty, rushed into surgery that came far too late. His tragic end exposes the harsh truth beneath Hollywood's golden mythology. Behind the shimmering images on screen were real people, people whose lives could be shattered by the very secrecy the system demanded. Marie McDonald, the body and the mystery that still haunts Hollywood. Marie McDonald was a product of Hollywood's obsession with physical perfection. Known to audiences as the body, her fame rested almost entirely on her figure, a commodity carefully cultivated by studio publicists and eagerly consumed by moviegoers. Every contract, every film appearance, every magazine spread emphasized her body first and her talent second. Her identity, at least in the public eye, was inseparable from her physical allure, and she learned early that in Hollywood, beauty could open doors that talent alone sometimes could not. But behind the glamour, McDonald's life was fraught with turbulence. 7 failed marriages reflected a search for stability that remained elusive. Personal struggles with emotional well-being and substance abuse became public knowledge, further complicating her image as the perfect starlet. And then there was one of Hollywood's most bizarre incidents, an alleged kidnapping that has remained the subject of speculation for decades. While details are murky, the episode contributed to the aura of chaos that seemed to follow her, cementing her status as both a victim of circumstance and a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame. In 1965, McDonald's life ended abruptly at the age of 42. The official cause of death listed a drug overdose. It reminds us that regardless of status, wealth, or celebrity, the human body remains vulnerable to the unexpected. Death, in its quiet unpredictability, does not discriminate, and in Bennett's case, it arrived silently during the most ordinary of circumstances. Constance Bennett, who had once commanded the attention of millions with elegance and charm, ultimately faced the same vulnerability shared by all. Her death was not dramatic or scandalous. It was simply the quiet, inevitable reminder that mortality spares no one, regardless of fame or fortune. Jean Harlow, Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, taken too soon. Jean Harlow was Hollywood's dazzling blonde sensation, combining overt sexuality with comedic charm. in a way that few had seen before. As a rising star in the early 1930s, she represented a new kind of female screen presence, confident, playful, and unforgettable. But her life ended tragically early, at just 26 years old, in 1937. Harlow had been suffering from kidney problems, including fluid retention, fatigue, and abdominal pain. Unfortunately, these early warning signs were misdiagnosed as minor illnesses, such as influenza or gallbladder infection. By the time her condition was correctly identified as severe kidney dysfunction, her body was already in critical failure. Emergency surgical intervention was planned, but it came too late. Harlow collapsed before the procedure could begin and never regained consciousness. Modern medical analysis suggests that earlier recognition and treatment could have saved her life. A tragic example of the limitations of 1930s medicine. Without antibiotics, dialysis, or contemporary surgical techniques, even a properly diagnosed kidney infection could prove fatal. As Dr. Robert Stevens explains, Jean Harlow's death highlights how medical knowledge of the era shaped outcomes that today might be preventable. A young star with immense potential was lost, not to scandal or vanity, but to the simple tragedy of delayed intervention. Harlow's death serves as a reminder of the fragility of life, even for those who seemed destined to shine forever. She represents the countless young talents whose mortality was starkly revealed by medical limitations, a sobering counterpoint to the timeless glamour her screen performances projected. The illusion of immortality shattered. The deaths of these 9 stars reveal something Hollywood rarely admits. Fame offers visibility, not invincibility.